first, I was a casting director. So I did, we put a few ads in Backstage newspaper, I think it was, and we found Harvey Keitel in 1965. He came to an audition, quote unquote, at NYU, which was actually just myself and a friend, and a couple of other people for some of my short films. But primarily, you at that time just grab your friends and your parents and put them in, because they're going to have to do it for you. You know, it's your parents, and if they're around and if they're available to do it, and it isn't so complicated, they've got to do it. So from that, basically a home movie. Mean Streets is like a home movie in a sense. Not literally, but, well, at some cases, yes. But at some points it is. But primarily, a lot of the people in the frame, and even to the extent of Robert De Niro, who grew up in that area. So he knew many of the people making the film about, and shot in the hallways of where we grew up and people around us. It was kind of a community effort, so to speak. Since then, I was able to work on a couple of films, 2 or 3 films, a very, very key casting process with Sis Corman, who did Raging Bull, King of Comedy, and Last Temptation of Christ originally. But in the late 80s, began to work with the same casting director, Ellen Lewis. And Ellen kind of, well, of course, we discuss the project. She reads what I'm going after, and she usually knows exactly what I want. For Goodfellas, for example, we were taken up to Rayo's restaurant, and in one night, we cast about 5 roles just from the people in the restaurant. So we've been doing that ever since, and for that kind of picture, for that kind of film. But she gives me a range of choices, and I respond to them, make decisions. The reason we work together is I could tell that the people she brings to me, I connect with, for the most part. So we kind of have the same taste, in a way. I always say that casting is 85 to 90% of the picture for me. So, all of you just starting out, I want to repeat, again, insist on what you want. And you don't settle for close enough or second best. And don't imagine there's a shortcut. It's meeting the people, spending time with them, talking with them, then putting them together with the other actors. That's a key thing. And see how the other actors respond. It's somewhat different, I think, than who I could imagine a studio system where, in the case of certain key films, filmmakers had to work with certain actors because of contractual issues. And very often they didn't get along with each other. But that was the contract, and they had to do it. Here, that may not be the case. I don't say you have to become friends, but you have to be, here's the key thing with casting, and this is why casting directors are so important. He or she has to know that with the actors, primarily, you want to work with the actors, you all agreeing you're making the same film. That's the key. Now, how you get to make the same film, that's part of the process of how you work with the actor. That's a give and take somehow. But if you all making the same film, you know that, and your casting director knows that, and she knows to pull actors for you to choose from that are of the same mind, then you have a possibility of making the picture. And you get this unexpected dimension. I found that I responded to actors pretty much through the films I saw. Now, for many years, through the 40s and early 50s, the films I saw, the acting was of a certain style, right? Of a certain time, coming out of Hollywood tradition or from England, for example. Wonderful, like Alec Guinness and Olivier and James Mason and so many others. In Hollywood, of course, you had the greats, Stewart and Cary Grant and Henry Fonda and so many others, and Maureen O'Hara and John Wayne and all of this sort of thing. But they're from another world, And of course, in England, another world. Then I saw Kazan's films. And I saw On the Waterfront and East of Eden. And those were both in the same year, I think, or a year apart. And those were a revelation in terms of behavior. And so it's really been inspired by what I saw there on the screen and what I experienced watching those films over and over again. And that's my gauge, I guess. That's where I go. And to a certain extent, I do like where Cassavetes worked, or where I worked on Italian American, my parents, documentary where they're telling stories, they're acting in a sense, but are they acting? And certain subject matter and certain stories that I make lend themselves to that kind of directing of actors or guidance of actors. But primarily, the actor has to already be there in a way. As I said, you can't tell a person how to lean against a car in 1955 on Elizabeth Street, or, you know, I don't know, other worlds. Of course, I had to be told in the case of Silence what a interrogation is like in the magistrate's office outside Nagasaki in 1632. So again, I see a certain thing, work around that, work with the actors that way. But primarily it's a combination, if I can, finding the person on screen as they're doing it, as they're in the process. Almost something that may not be, it certainly doesn't feel like it's scripted in many cases. That's what I'm hoping for, you know? Something natural. But not, I don't know what naturalism is, I don't know what realism is. I'm just, this is where I was talking about the business of the mixture of nonfiction and fiction, where it all becomes a film. I don't know what you want to call it, but that's what it is. I do think, for me, coming out of a situation where I often worked with people who are around, mixed with actors, they have to come from that spot. They have to come from that part of the world. They have to come from that culture, I should say, particularly in certain films depicting certain periods or certain worlds, like a Mean Streets or a Taxi Driver or Raging Bull, et cetera, King of Comedy. That was contemporaneous to me, you know, and I felt that mixing non-actors with the actors, partially, I must say again, going back to the beginnings of making films, we had no choice but to use non-actors. So it became something that was natural to me, and so we kind of relied on that. It also meant that by placing a non-actor in with the actors, as long as the actors, as I say, are making the same film as you, as long as they understand the environment that they're working within, they could maybe lose, if there is any artificiality, lose that by being around the non-actor, you see. Sir Ben Kingsley doing Georges Méliès. He finds the posture, and that's Georges. I know it's there, you see. I know it's there. His look, his manner, and his use of the language and the text. He's one who sticks with the text. And that particular film, and even in Shutter Island with Ben, you're able to work with that text. I mean, he's there. His behavior as the doctor in Shutter Island is there. It was there, the way he moves, and the look in his eye. And so that's another way of feeling, how should I say, that the person inhabits the role, you see. I had a confidence. In fact, I never even thought of him as Ben Kingsley when we were doing Hugo. It was always Georges. I remember the great-granddaughter, I think, was sitting on the set one day in Paris, and she came to say hello, and we got to meet, and Ben came out. It was in the Sorbonne, and Ben came out of the door, came out of the main auditorium into the lobby, and she suddenly teared up because it was her great-grandfather whom she never met. And this was spontaneous. It's not, oh, this is so-and-so and he's portraying. This is just happened to be at the moment. So there was some sense of authority, really the character. You know, it's something I admire greatly. I can't do it, nor can I think I can really excel in directing or creating that with certain actors or certain kinds of pictures. I don't think I can. But when I experience it on the set with people like Ben and Daniel Day and a number of others, it's something of a sense of awe, a sense of a beauty and power that something you respect and admire.